Do you ever get that feeling like there's more that you could be doing or that you should be doing more, or you just might be apathetic about life right now? Well, you're not alone. Maybe you should just try to get out of your comfort zone. That's what we're going to talk about today. So, finding out how to get uncomfortable is part of your journey. Some of you might be amazing at it already and you're constantly pushing those boundaries. But I guarantee there's some spot or some place in your life where you're going to be able to find an edge, learn how to work within it, and then learn how to work past it. And I think it's important to understand, what are edge moments, what are comfort zones, and what are those things? Just think of a comfort zone of that place where everything's familiar, it's known, it's safe, it's comfortable, it's routine. Those are those places where you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you put your coffee on, you go to your desk, you sit down, you plug in your computer, or you switch on your computer, you look at your phone, you do your morning work with your morning Zooms, you get to your first meeting, you have your coffee, you mindlessly surf the net for a bit, you get back to your next meeting, you have lunch, you go to your back to your office and you have another set of meetings, you do your productivity that you need to do, you go home, you get your fitness, you kiss your wife, you love your kids, you have dinner and you go to bed. Very comfortable. And that's not to say that's not a fantastic life. But if you're going to try to move past that, if you're going to try to get to a place you might want to go, you've got to find a place to get uncomfortable. You've got to find an edge. Think of, again, the adventure examples of edges. You've got skydiving. You've got to leap out of that plane. It's okay to get to that edge, but at some point you got to leap out. Bungee jumping. It's okay to go through all those steps. And I think bungee jumping is one of my favorite examples for edges or comfort. The first thing you have to do is you got to pay your money. Second thing you have to do is you got to tell them your weight. If you're someone who has an issue with their weight or a concern or an edge with their weight, it's not even bad enough that you have to tell them your weight. They write it down on your arms so that everybody in the world knows that you're X amount of pounds. And for some people, that's an edge that prevents them from even taking that leap to go to the bungee. The next step is you got to climb a big ladder usually, or you got to climb a staircase, or you've got to get to the spot where you sit down and they strap that bungee onto you. All these different edges lead up to that moment where you're actually standing on the whatever the bridge or the platform or the walk a plank that they have you, and that person says 3, 2, 1, bungee. Up until then, you can quit. You can test that edge all the way along, but at the end, you got to jump. You got to take that leap. So that's really what edge is, and what creating an edge and creating that place past the comfort is at the end of the day, you got to explore it, but you ultimately have to push past it. I think some of the edges that we're most familiar with are those edges we have with our family, where our teens are doing something. We have our babies that are teething and they're having their first teeth and we don't know what to do. As a new dad, when I was a new dad, I didn't understand how to make my son stop crying. And it was painful to me that I couldn't do it. I didn't have the capacity to meet my child's needs. That was the first time in my life where I didn't have the capacity to do something. That was a massive edge for me, trying to figure out that I just had to let go. That Kathy was the only thing that was going to meet my son's needs at that point, and I had to let it go. So that was an edge I had to get past. We have business ones. It could be your job's been transitioned. That's an edge you've got to get past. It could be you've got a new CEO or a new direct report or somebody who you now is the person that's telling you what you have to do. That's an edge. It might be forced on you, or it might be one that you're being forced into. But at the end of the day, that's an edge you've got to get past. Understanding those edges, understanding that each of these new situations is a chance for you to push past something is really important to look at. And it's really important to track that for yourself, because the more you track it, the bigger you can make that edge moment. One of the things I encourage my clients to do, or people that I work with, because I love working around this edge concept and crafting an edge and getting past your comfort zone, is I encourage them to kind of go through a checklist. When they're coming up to an edge, or when you're presented with an edge that you're either doing yourself or that's been forced upon you, what's going on for you at that moment? You don't have to solve anything, because that edge is going to be there for a while, or maybe it's fleeting, but the fact of the matter is you've got to check in. What am I feeling right now? If you're going to start doing your first YouTube channel and you're going to do your first video and you look at that camera for the first time, what's that feel like? Is it anxiousness? Is it excitement? Is it your face getting physically? Are you getting flushed? Are you not being able to speak? Is your breath going? Are you tongue-tied all of a sudden? What's the physiological thing that's happening to you? Take attention to that. Be mindful of that. Write it down. What kind of behavior am I doing? Have I always been absent-minded as soon as it comes time to perform? Do I get that performance anxiety? That's part of your charting. That's part of your recognizing this is what happens to me when I get to an edge. What kind of self-talk do you have? Are you defeatist? I'm never going to be able to do good at this. I'm going to have a challenge with this. I look stupid. What is that self-talk that's going on when you hit that edge moment? Do you have that opportunity? The other thing that really shows up a lot of times when we're at that edge is our old patterns, our old way of thinking, our old belief systems. They come crashing in, especially if it's something that you're really passionate about. Again, use the YouTube example. If you're trying to start a channel and part of starting that channel is you want to give your gift to the world, have you failed at that before? Have you tried before? And is that past preventing you from stepping through that edge? Because that past is a really, really loud voice. And our past sometimes prevents us from getting into our future. So when you're stepping into that edge, when you're coming across that edge or coming to that edge, what's going on with me physiologically? What's going on with me emotionally? What's going on with me mentally? What's going on with me spiritually? These are all things to just recognize, journal, write down, because you're going to test that edge again and again and again. And part of testing that edge is learning what tools you need to take with you to break through to that next side. I like doing this activity with people. So it kind of takes you back. And if you're around my age, it will definitely take you back, but there's all sorts of different things that you can do. But remember when you blew a bubble? When I was a kid, we used to have double bubble. And I used to hang out at the baseball field. I was a kind of a baseball rat when I was like 6 to 10 years old. And we would stuff our mouth with double bubble gum, partly because we wanted to get to the comics, but we'd also see how many we could throw in our mouth. But the kind of the best spot of all was when you had 2 pieces of bubble gum and you put those in your mouth, you can make the biggest bubbles. But I remember there was a process to it. And that process, I think, is really interesting to explore when you think about edge crafting or when you think about crafting a new edge. For that bubblegum example, you would put 1 piece in your mouth and it was hard, especially if it had been in there a while. And it would be crunchy in your mouth and you would cut the corners of your mouth, but you would finally get it to a consistency where you're like, all right, I'm going to throw that next piece in. And that's an edge, right? Because you want to blow the perfect bubble. But you get that second piece in and you'd be chewing that and you'd be getting into that moment of chewing that bubble gum. And finally you would reach that consistency where you're like, all right, I'm going to try my first bubble. And that's kind of another edge. I'm willing to now put that breath into it. But as you put that breath into it, it's not quite ready and the saliva goes everywhere, but you still keep trying until eventually you get that bubble. And this is when you had the choice. You had the choice whether you were going to put more air in, or you were going to suck it back in your mouth with that wonderful popping sound that it would make, or you would just put that air in so it exploded. And with the explosion, there was the risk that it was going to go all over your face. And, it could go as big as the bubbles would get sometimes. I remember getting bubbles in my hair, but I was willing to take that risk because it was worth the effort, or the risk was worth it because I had made a bubble that blew up in my face. Those are really simple examples. And I encourage you, go grab a stick of gum sometime and just blow a bubble and understand that visceral feeling of pushing through an edge. It's the same with blowing, it's a little more dramatic, but blow up a balloon. Blow it up till it pops. There's a point when you're blowing up that balloon, and if you've never done it, try it. Try to feel that edge because you can hear it. The sound of the plastic as it's getting stretched thinner and thinner and thinner. You'll hear it ready to explode at some point, but you'll never know when it's going to explode. It'll only explode when you've pushed it past its limit. And that's what edge crafting is. You've got to push it past. And once it blows, you find that next edge. That's what it is about when we're committed to doing something. That's what it is when we're trying to go after something that we want to go after. We've got to get to that edge. We've got to find a way to explore it. We've got to find a way to own it for ourselves, but we also have to find a way to get past it, because as soon as we get past it, we're into that new learning. That's where apathy dies. That's where our attention to something greater than ourselves lives. And that's what I encourage you all to do. Get past that comfort, do the uncomfortable things, because soon those uncomfortable things, those are going to be the arrows in your quiver. Have an awesome one. Subscribe to the 365 Effect if you're enjoying the content. Share it with someone, because the more we all get together about trying to make small daily actions, changing the way that we see ourselves and uncovering our better, the happier this world's going to be. And let's all try to be a piece of it. Have a great one. We'll see you soon.